Hello, good morning, and welcome to the Sunday edition of what's it called again? Yeah, A Proud Malcontent. I am Pete Bell. I am a proud malcontent. If I seem a bit out of breath this morning, it's because I'm out of breath. It's been the usual Sunday morning war with the gremlins. It always seems to be on a Sunday that this happens. When I'm in a bit of a rush to get ready for 10 o'clock, for the 10 o'clock start. So I'm prepared now, just about, I think. It's always on a Sunday morning that the gremlins attack and attack seriously, and everything breaks. Everything's broken. That's what I was going to talk about first this morning, because uh, when as usual on a Sunday, I had a quick look at the National. I usually pick out one or two or maybe three pieces from the National to comment on, usually relating to the constitutional issue, of course. And uh, today I couldn't really find anything. It was because I was short of time, but also because there's just this immediate impression that I got looking at the front page online of the National, and you can see that if we look at all these stories, the impression that I got right away is everything's broken, everything's chaos, everything's in disarray, everything's buggered up. Yeah. Uh, More specifically, here we have, well, just a quick run through of some of these stories. The BBC again. The BBC seems to be just totally broken. Many of you may know that I actually defend the BBC. The BBC as an institution, I think, is excellent. It's superb, and the license fee, the principle of universality that applies to the BBC as an institution is superb. It's independent financing. It's a perfect system. It's as near perfect as you'll get. As an institution, as an organisation, the BBC is a shambles. It's a mess. And it's all because of the bad management. Bad management explains a hell of a lot of things. But this is a story, and at the centre of this story is the guy Paul Ovenden, who tweeted some stuff, nasty stuff about Diane Abbott. I say tweeted; there were messages. I'm not sure if it was on Twitter, X, whatever, but it's just some nasty stuff. Nasty enough that I haven't actually seen it published anywhere. So I'm suspecting it would be stuff that papers would be, newspapers or TV, they would be risking a brush with the law if they actually published it. So that'll give you an idea of how bad it was. And the impression I get from this immediately, it's not just to do with the BBC. Apparently the BBC tried to bury this. I don't know whether they did or not. But the point that came across to me was this guy worked in politics. He was kind of near the sharp end. I think he was with the British Labour Party. He was a press officer or something of that. And he sent these messages. He sent these messages with misogynistic and racist comments about Diane Abbott. And I just thought, how bloody stupid is that? How stupid is it? It's just stupid. And talking of stupid, here's another thing. Here's Jamie Hepburn. Jamie Hepburn had a little brush with Douglas Ross. Now, all my sympathies in this would normally be with Jamie Hepburn, except that he's, as he admits himself, it was a bloody stupid thing to do. He actually laid hands on Douglas Ross. It was only grabbing his shoulder, but he laid hands on him, as well as saying, using some industrial language or industrious language, as I think he put it. I think he meant industrial language. But it was the laying on of hands, which is just a step too far. And again, it was just a stupid thing to do. This guy's a professional politician. He's also, I get the impression that he's quite a nice guy. I've met him maybe a couple of times, talked briefly with him, and I get the impression that he is a nice guy. Douglas Ross must have been really brushing him up the wrong way for him to lose the place as badly as he did. Now, some of us might wish he'd gone a wee bit further. Some of us might think that Douglas Ross deserved a wee bit more of a telling off. However, it wasn't Jamie Hepburn's job to do that. So he's been a bit foolish. And then right next door to that, we have your party and all the turmoil party with Sultana and Corbyn at odds because apparently Sultana opened up this gateway for people to actually join the party, take a membership of the party with payments and all the rest of it. And then was told by Corbyn that she wasn't entitled to do that. And the arguments have gone backwards and forward. And Zara Sultana's now instructed lawyers. It looks like she's going to sue the party or Jeremy Corbyn for defamation. It's just a mess. It is just a mess. And it all adds to this feeling of chaos in our politics, in our life. And using the word chaos, nice link there, professional style link to the next story. Labour chaos as senior MSP backs Andy Burnham over Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer's jacket's looking like it's on a very shugly nail. And there's Andy Burnham seems to be making his move, his long-awaited move, it should be said, for party leadership. Whether that'll be an improvement or not, I have no idea, but experience would suggest not. As much as we've called for British prime ministers or home secretaries, much as there have been great calls for them to go, is usually proved a bit of a double-edged sword, because the replacement has turned out to be absolutely worse, which all adds to this feeling of decline, that everything is just going aughty. There's other stories. There's other stories like that. Clive Lewis, a major figure in the Labour, he's saying this government is not capable of taking on the far right. Well, you've got to agree with him there. They're very much not. And Ruth Wishart, the lovely Ruth Wishart, and she's got in her column today, it's about Trump and Trump's threat to remove the licenses of broadcast organizations that criticize him. That is scary stuff. That is serious, scary stuff. And Pete Wishart has one of his no shit Sherlock moments when he tells us that the rise of the far right must be fought across Scotland. For once, I have to agree with him. But whether he's actually got an answer to that, it has to be said that whereas the British Labour, Keir Starmer, is very much pandering to the far right with his policies, especially on immigration. He's very much pandering to the far right. At least John Swinney's he's taken them on. He's confronting the far right. He's confronting their rhetoric on immigration, and yep, that is a good thing. Whether John Swinney's the man to do it, because it has to be done quite aggressively, I think. And I don't know that he's a man for that. So I was desperately looking for something positive on the constitutional front, and we have here Believe in Scotland. A captain of the independence industry, Gordon McIntyre Kemp, has launched his latest campaign, which is focusing on energy and the cost of energy, and the promise that energy bills for consumers would be massively reduced with independence. This, I have to say, again, I'm not all that often in agreement with Gordon McIntyre Kemp, but energy strikes me as being one of these issues. Simply telling people that the union is bad for Scotland, while we've got to do it, people have to experience that badness. They have to actually experience. So creating a link between the union and being in the union and something like the cost of energy, something that is part of people's lived experience, that works. That is important. I'm not sure that it's going to be carried through. Once again, it's one of these things where if the SNP, as the Scottish government, as the party of government, if the Scottish government is not carrying that same message, it's not going to get the coverage. It's not going to get public's attention. Although it has to be said that Believe in Scotland are making a very big attempt to spread the word. 100,000 leaflets, up to 100,000 leaflets, as it says in the National, which could include the figure 0. So, that's a bit of a nonsense. But they're spreading these, distributing these leaflets, and they had a day of action yesterday. So they're putting in the effort. And right next to that, we have John Swinney writing a letter to Palestinians. That's an example of him actually standing up to the anti-immigrant rhetoric, which I regard as just stupid. Talking about stupid, we have a picture of Tommy Robinson there. That's enough of that. Another positive, we have the Salvo Liberation Initiative to the UN in Geneva, which I believe went very well. That was on Thursday. I believe it went very well, despite some difficulties. There was a rescheduling of another event related to Gaza, and that's created some difficulties. But the event was well attended, and attended by some significant people, people with a high profile within the UN and within the international community. Notably, some of the delegates from Africa. And there seems to have been quite a good impression made there. There are problems with this, but it's a worthwhile initiative. It's a worthwhile initiative so long as we have the internal process in place. But yeah, I've talked about that from time to time, all the time, as some people would point out. So what strikes me is this general feeling of breakdown, a breakdown of the order. Nothing is working. Everybody's making stupid mistakes. It's just a mess. I've a funny feeling lost video, which is a bit problematic. Just a second. It's going to be very embarrassing. Sorry about that. I thought we had a technical problem there, and we didn't. It was my mistake. It was the light was covered on the camera. This general feeling of chaos and breakdown, and the far right making strides. And what struck me was that this feeling of chaos and disorder, disarray, breakdown, those are actually the conditions which favour the far right. These are the conditions where their simplistic solutions have the most appeal, and that would explain why we're getting these anti-immigrant demonstrations, and Tommy Robinson leading a huge demonstration in London. It's like it's a self-reinforcing, a self-perpetuating cycle. The breakdown of the normal order leaves conditions ideal for the far right. The far right then steps in, makes things worse, which makes things better for them. And so it goes on. And right now we're going to move on, and we're going to take a wee break from the strictly constitutional issue, and we're going to invite back Stephen Duncan, who is, if I can actually click the... Hello, Stephen, are you with us?
Hiya. Yes, I'm here, Peter.
There he is. Hi, Stephen.
Hi.
And we can hear you well, which is excellent. Good again. And we are still looking at the voting system, the AMS voting system for Scottish Parliament elections. And if you maybe could tell the viewers what exactly you'll be looking at today.
Okay, well, this is the second instalment of the what I'm calling the AMS game, the additional member system or voting system that's used at Holyrood. And last week we looked at the proportionality of the Holyrood Parliament, how proportional it was compared to Westminster council elections. And what we're going to do this week is examine what it takes to win a seat, or a regional list seat at Holyrood. And it's specifically going to look at the claim that it takes 6% on the regional vote share to win a seat in the Holyrood Parliament.
Right. I shall put up the presentation and leave you to run through it with people.
Okay, Peter. Yeah, so 6% makes it sound like it's winning list seats is easy at Holyrood. So we'll just look at that claim now and see if that is the case. And in order to check out that claim, we need to have a conceptual understanding of how regional list seats are actually allocated. And I've got an actual worked example here to sort of demonstrate that. And this is from the 2021 Holyrood election. It's it's in the Glasgow region on the list vote. So just a reminder, there are 7 seats per region, and there are 8 regions, so there's 56 regional seats that are up for grabs at every Holyrood election. So the first thing to look at is the quotient of votes that is required that parties have at the beginning of the counting and allocating of the regional list seats. Now, that is dependent at the outset on the number of seats that are won in the constituency and the vote share that's achieved on the region. So to take the SNP as an example, in Glasgow, they swept the board, as they did in most regions. They swept the board on the constituency. They won 9 out of 9 seats on the constituency ballot. And on the regional vote share, they also were, well ahead, 43.9% of the vote share, almost twice as much as the nearest competitor, which was Labour in that region. But if you look at the fifth column in, which is the votes that are what I'm calling the effective vote share. So that's where you take the vote share, in the SNP's case, 43.9%, and divide it by the number of constituency seats won plus 1. So that's dividing it by 10. So that effective vote share goes from 43.9% to 4.39% in the case of the SNP at the outset, before you even start allocating any of the list seats. So for Labour, Conservatives and Greens, etc., none of them won any seats, so their effective vote share is the same as their gross vote share. So, for example, Labour, 24.29% vote share in the region. Their effective vote share at the outset is 24.29%, because there's nothing to do. You're dividing it by 1, which is effectively has no effect. So Labour win the first regional seat allocated by dint of having the highest effective vote share.
Once again, Stephen, this seems to confirm their version of events, the version of the story that says that the list seat, the SNP 1 and 2 voting strategy, the list vote is wasted. Not a term I would use, but that is the term. That is wasted. If people remember from the last episode, we seem to go backwards and forwards. One moment we seem to be confirming this SNP 1 and 2 was correct. It was a true picture, and then the next we seem to be going the other way. Is this going to be the same today? Do you think they were going to go backwards and forwards between the two?
I think you'll find that well, this sort of favours the splitting the vote, if you like. If you're a pro-independence supporter, splitting a vote amongst independence parties, but so that you get a result for your vote. So you've got 44% of the votes there that are going to count for nothing, because the SNP didn't win any seats in Glasgow. It won 2 seats in total across all the regions, despite having similar vote shares across the regions. But because they won so many of the constituencies... Yep.
Sorry, Stephen. We seem to have a wee bit of lag on audio here, so that does make it kind of awkward when we're talking backwards and forwards. It makes conversation very difficult. But basically, all I was trying to point out there is that the people who've got their fingers hovering to switch off just because you've said something that seems to speak favourably of the SNP 1 and 2. If they're about to switch off, they should hang on, because it's not all going to be like that at all.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the first round of voting. Labour win that seat. What happens then is the number that's used to dilute their vote, the divisor, increments by 1. So the divisor at the end of at the outset was 1. That now becomes 2, because they've won a seat. So it's 1 plus 1. So what you're doing is taking that 24.29% vote share, dividing that by 2. So at the beginning of round 2, 4 columns along, the vote share goes from 24, the effective vote share goes from 24.29% to 12.144%. I've taken that to 3 decimal places because it's very close to the Conservative vote at that point, but still marginally ahead. So unusually, Labour win 2 seats in a row in the region. That's quite unusual. That's why I picked this one out. Odd things can happen. So they've now won 2 seats at the end of round 2.
Sorry to butt in again, Stephen. That's just a point that struck me there. It maybe there may be a wee bit of confusion about that, but a lot of people know that there's seats, constituency seats won that affect the vote share for the list seats. But what you were pointing out there is also list seats won. So that the one seat that Labour won on the list, that then counts, so that the divisor becomes 2. I think there may be a few people who are not taking that into account. I'm not sure about that, but it just struck me at the time as being something that people might not be familiar with.
Yes, I think you're right. It's a the allocation of list seats is a function of seats won to date, if you like, as you go through the 7 different rounds of voting. This total, the seats won to date, that will be the constituency seats in total, plus the number of regional seats won at the beginning that you've accumulated by the beginning of that particular round of counting, or that particular round of allocating or calculating who's going to win that the next MSP seat in the regions. So yeah, it's a function of total seats to date and vote share or effective vote share at that point in time. So the process carries on and repeats itself for 7 rounds of counting. There are 7 MSPs seats to be won on the regions for each region. So that process just repeats itself until all the seats have been allocated. So that's just a recap of how the voting system works, which is useful so that as sort of preparation for what we're about to examine now, and that's this supposed 6% hurdle or threshold that people have claim is what's required to win, or what has been required to win a list seat historically in Holyrood. So what in this particular slide.
Sorry, Stephen, I know I made this point last time, but I think it's worth emphasising it again, and that is that this isn't an official threshold. There's not a rule. This is very much an informal threshold, this 6%. It's a generalisation about the way things actually turn out in real life, so to speak. It is not a rule. That's the point I want to stress.
Yes, yes, that's exactly right. It's not a rule of Holyrood that if you achieve 6% on the list, you're going to automatically get a seat. That's not the case. What I'm looking at here is just investigating or trying to substantiate what that percentage has historically been. To win a seat, and it changes with every parliament, and that'll become quite clear as we go through the rest of these slides. That it'll depend on not just the votes, but particularly the number of parties competing for these votes. But we'll see that in the next slide or two.
Right. Right now. This is where reform comes into it, I think.
Yes.
Am I right in saying reform's
Correct.
not a factor in 21,
That's
but
right.
very much it looks like being a factor in next year in 2026, and that has a significant impact. That's what people
Yes.
keeping in mind as you're looking at the effect, the outcome without reform that's going to be compared.
Correct. So just walk through this sort of example. What I've got on the left-hand table is the results for Central Scotland in 2021. So if we look at again the party that swept the seats in the constituency is the SNP, but look in the list, they got no seats at all, despite having 45.3% of the vote. Labour are 23.7, Tories 18.3, everybody else pretty much nowhere. But look at the effective list vote share. Again, the SNP goes, divided by 10, so it goes down to 4.53%. Labour, no, the divisor is 1, similarly Conservatives and the Greens. So their effective vote share is the same as their gross vote share. And if you're looking at the effective vote share per list seat 1, you can see that Labour have achieved 7.9%. So what that's saying is that for the 3 seats they won, the effective vote, they had to, for each of the seats they won, which was 3, they gave up 7.9%. They had to have 7.9% of vote share to achieve that. So it's like 23.7% divided by 3. The Conservatives are more efficient. They got 6.1% to achieve their 3 seats. So that's 18.3 divided by 3. And the Greens, even though they had less than 6%, just under, they managed still to achieve, obtain 1 seat. So the comparison there: SNP 45.3% of the list vote share, no seats. Greens 5.96% of the list vote share, 1 seat. Quite significant that. Looking at the average for the Central Scotland, to achieve a seat, that was 6.65% amongst these 3 parties, just a simple average. And what I've then done is calculated that for all the regions for 2021, and similarly for again in 2016, and looked at the overall averages across the regions. So in 2016, that came out at just under 6.2%, and just about 6.7% in 2021. So you could say that roughly about 6.5% to obtain a list vote, a list seat in the last 2 Holyrood elections.
So if we stop thinking about the issue at that point, we would say, right, at that point, we would say, right, that's it, proved. With the 6% threshold at that point, because that is what some of the proponents of voting strategies do. When they claim that they don't lie, the figures don't lie, but what generally done is that they've stopped examining it. They've reached the answer that they want, and then they've stopped. They don't go, but you do, because you're Stephen Duncan.
I just like to understand these things, and things change. They don't stay. Things don't always stay the same, and I think we should always sort of bear that in mind. But the one thing to think about this, we know that Reform are running roughly.
We're getting a few,
depending which opinion poll you're looking at.
We seem to be getting a few hiccups here.
I can't hear you, Peter.
We seem to
That's
be getting
better.
a few hiccups on audio. If you could just persevere, please, Stephen.
Okay, is that better?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So what I was going to say was that Reform are roughly around about 20% in the polls at the moment, maybe 15 to 20%. If that 6.65 or 6.5% hurdle were to apply, they would get roughly 3 seats, per region, which would be about 24 seats. But we'll look at that in a bit more detail on the next slide. So what this slide does, it looks at the recent More in Common opinion poll from the end of last month, and compares maps the vote shares to the MSPs, makes a projection for the MSPs based on that, the number of MSPs they would achieve based on that poll. Now, on that, I've also calculated the list vote shares required to win a seat. So we've got, as you pointed out already, got 6 parties rather than 5 parties competing for the same number of seats, which is 56 seats. And what that has done is, the effect that's had is to increase the effective list vote share that you require at the beginning of the counting process in order to obtain a seat. So there's 2 different methods of doing this. I'm not going to go into the details of these. One's called an additive method, one's called a relative method, and they're both highlighted there in that table. But they roughly come out with the same result. That is that you're probably going to require, as things stand, according to that opinion poll, around about 8%, not 6.5%, around about 8% to obtain to gain a seat in each of the regions. And if you think about it
this will have particular implications for other party, I would think, because for a start, their voting strategy, their recommended voting strategy, their max to yes strategy, SNP won, other independence party, by which they mean themselves, on the list vote. That was based on the pre-reform arithmetic. So now that reform is in the picture, and assuming that it continues to be as prominent in the picture as it is at the polls at the moment, this is going to have a serious. It makes that the arithmetic that was used by ALPA when they were thinking of this strategy, it makes that arithmetic obsolete, does it not?
the calculation is still the same, but the assumptions they've based it on are out of date, because reform have pushed the number of parties realistically compete for seats from 5 to 6, and they're not. Remember, they're not just taking 8 or 9% of the vote. It looks like they're taking close to 20% of the list share vote, 16, 17%. It's a fair chunk. So it's not just another party competing at 1 or 2% in the polls. It's competing at a real, high level, and that's what's making the difference. It's a bit like, think about it as a sort of the simple law of supply and demand in economics theory. You've got a fixed supply of seats, at 56, but you're going to increase demand, and it's quite a high level of demand in the shape of reform. So in order to bring the market back to equilibrium, the price goes up. And the price in this case is the vote share that you have to attain to win a seat. So it becomes more expensive, and it's therefore, in other words, harder to win a regional seat. And that's it is the case for ALPA. It's the case for everybody, but pretty much pushes Alba, as things stand, in a fairly hopeless situation. If they're achieving, like 2% maybe in the opinion polls at the moment, and they've got to get to 8%, barring some kind of implosion by reform, it's always possible, they're going to have to increase their vote share fourfold in order to, relatively speaking, in order to be competitive for a seat in any of the regions. But it also means that the SNP, who won 2 seats last time, 4 the time before that, now that the effective vote share has gone up to 8%, and they're roughly about 32% in the polls on the list, that gives them an effective vote share of 3.5% maybe. No, nowhere near winning a seat on the list in rough cut terms. It will vary by region, of course, because this is a rough cut, averaging out at 8%. It will vary higher and lower, so it's still possible for the SNP to win a seat, but increasingly unlikely. So that brings us to the last slide and the conclusion. So historically, yes, it's a reasonably good rule of thumb, although maybe not 6%, maybe 6.5% in between 2016 and 2021 is what was required in order to win a seat. As I mentioned already, the threshold varies by region because local conditions apply. But going forward, the cost of a seat or the price of a seat is likely to be higher. You've got Reform, who are pretty well established in the polls now, and looking like it's going to stay that way. I put down there the Corbyn party, your party, our party, whatever it's going to be called. Although that does seem to, it looks like that's been problematic at the moment with what's going on between Sultana and Corbyn that you were mentioning earlier on at the top of the show. So they might not be a competitor. If they that'll squeeze, that'll push the price up even further, you would imagine. And that price is already about 8% effective vote share in order to get a seat. Remember, the 8% effective vote share means that if you get 8%, the likelihood is you'll get 1 seat in each of the regions, i.e., 8 seats, give or take. So that's this week's piece on the AMS game, Peter.
Right, thanks for that, Stephen. There's some interesting points come out of that. The most significant point is that Reform UK, they're not just having an impact on politics in general, changing the face of politics. They're having a major impact on the Holyrood voting system. They're really throwing everything into turmoil, and all the calculations that have been done up until now, the calculations behind both the SNP 1 and 2 strategy and the SNP 1A and other 2, both those strategies now seem a lot less realistic.
I'd say so, unless you mentioned the Reform are the disruptor, and they've come in and done what maybe some more radical independence party could have done. Maybe they still can do, and that's maybe what we'll look at next week when we're looking at this, maybe in more detail, the supermajority approach. It's still possible that another radical independence party could come in, take all that SNP vote share that's not currently being efficiently, it's not the independence vote share that's not being efficiently allocated at the moment because it's going to the SNP and for no seats return. If that vote was to shift to another party, the New Scotland Party, for want of a better expression, that would again push the vote share up, and it might find that will squeeze Reform. So if they were to get a sufficient amount of it, let's say that 32% vote share, 20 or 25% went to another genuinely pro-independence party with a more disruptive influence, some more radical approach to it, that you could end up having, and we'll see next week, having the best of all possible worlds, which would be you get a big vote on the for independence in the constituency, a big vote for independence on the regions, and as a consequence, you get a supermajority of MSPs in the parliament. That's the sort of you win all ends up. However you measure winning an election, you've won it in 3 different ways.
But the point, the point here is that it would require either it would require a new pro-independence party, but sufficiently radical on the constitutional issue to challenge Kay for the role of disruptor, or it would require one or more of the existing pro-independence, nominally pro-independence party. It would require them to change their approach, which they really should be considering anyway. I've criticised them for not changing their approach in light of developments over the last 11 years, the developments since the 2014 referendum. They seem to be taking no account of that. But now, as things stand, with the strategies that these parties are recommending, that they're promoting, they're not even taking account of current conditions.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I think they need to reappraise their whole approach to the independence question, and and there isn't any sign of that at the moment from any of the parties. From Alba Party still saying the same thing. As you mentioned already, without changing how they're going to deliver independence, or how they're saying they're going to deliver it. It's just the same old tired rhetoric. Obviously, it's the same with the SNP. Just vote for us, and we'll make a request for a referendum. That's the terms and conditions being set by London. So yeah, I think they're. I can't see why they haven't. Why they haven't reconsidered that long before now. It's been almost 5 years, or it will be 5 years by the time of the next election, and nothing's happened. No change of approach. All that's happened is the parties have split, and there's infighting in the movement, but nothing particularly good has come out of it. There's no. Sometimes you can have a breakdown and people fall out, and then they come back together and they've put something better in place. That's not happened yet. Shows no signs of it either, apart from the Scottish EDI process.
Right.
I might add.
So, yeah. What is it you'll be looking at next week? Just a little preview of next week.
Well, it's just really the implications of this for the supermajority approach to specifically to the 2026 Holyrood election. So what the impact of reform and others have been, and what might have to happen in order to get that supermajority. We can also discuss whether that's desirable or not to getting a supermajority if there's no change to the approach. But it's more about how could that come up? Can a supermajority be obtained? A supermajority just being a loose it's loosely defined, but somewhere upwards of 80 MSPs being pro-independence, if you like, from across different parties.
Stephen, we're getting your audio is very badly breaking up now. But I take the point that you're making, and we're binging on next week's show anyway. So I will thank you very much for this presentation today. It's been very interesting. A lot of very serious points arising from it. So I'll say thank you, and we'll see you again next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye for now, Stephen. Yeah, sorry, apologies to Stephen there. Apologies for cutting him off, but his audio was breaking up rather badly. As I say, there's some quite serious issues arise out of what Stephen's been talking about today, as examining especially the impact of reform, and the fact that this doesn't appear to be taken into account by any of the parties. They are all talking about defeating reform and taking the reform effect out of the voting. However, that doesn't seem to be working, and you have to wonder if it will, because reform. If we look at the reasons that reform is having this success that it is, as I said at the top of the show, when things are breaking down, when the system appears to be in a state of chaos and chaos, creates ideal conditions for the disruptor to come in. The disruptor being the one that comes in, taking advantage of the chaos and saying, right, everything is broken, we will fix it. We will sweep away all the bad, all the corruption, we will fix it. There's very little detail on how they will fix it. It's mostly just rhetoric about against the things that they say are causing the problems, immigration being a particular one. It's not just immigration, but it is immigration. But this isn't actually about immigration. It's about power. And this is reform is another power block, which is trying to take advantage of the weakness of the established power. Reform has become the countervailing power. Well, the established power, there's the countervailing power, which is always trying to find a way in. And reform has found a way in, basically because Keir Starmer and his predecessors have created this weakness that allows reform a way in. And the disruptor, they come and they say they're just going to tear it all down. And they do this because there's an opportunity for them to get power. And the targeting of immigrants is simply a part of that power struggle, that strive for power. And we see this same thing in the US with Trump, and he has been very successful at it. I mean, he's a horrible man. He's not right in the head. That is fairly obvious. And yet, there he is, the most powerful man in the supposedly free world, arguably the most powerful man in the world, or at least holding the most powerful office in the world. How the hell can that happen? Well, because the established order, the rules-based world order, was breaking down, because some of the rules were being broken with impunity, and that makes it look weak. And then you get the disruptor coming in to take advantage of that weakness in order to seize some power. And as I say, we've seen that in the US, and it is exactly the same process in the UK context. It's playing in the UK mainly because it's playing in England. as a number of commentators have pointed out, the success of reform has mainly been in England, and Scotland is simply being dragged along on this, which is not to say that reform does not have support in Scotland, but I suspect it only has that support, or that support has only become as large and as visible as it is because of reform's success in England. Point: reform is going to have a massive impact. As things stand, we always have to add that proviso. Reform is going to have a massive impact on next year's election, taking around 20% of the vote share on the list vote, the regional vote. That is going to have a very significant impact. And none of the pro-independence parties are taking this into account. It makes my point, the point that I've been making since before the 2021 election, and that is that we need a radical independence party, a pro-independence party which will be the disruptor, which can compete with reform for the role of disruptor. And because it would be presumably a party that could attract the pro-independence vote, it's likely to be at least as successful as reform, because that's a big chunk of the vote. It's around 50% of the vote. So what if we're actually interested in beating the far right and taking reform out of the picture? The solution is either a new party comes along with a radical approach to the constitutional issue, Scottish UDI, which I still maintain is the only way that independence be restored. Either we get a new party to be the disruptor, or one of the existing parties becomes the disruptor. I always hoped that that would be Alapa. I saw that as Alapa's role when first distance, and I was hugely disappointed when it failed abysmally because of poor leadership. And yes, I know that some decisions, some of the choices that were made on the Alapa Party were simply for any party leadership. They were just wrong. Alapa had that chance, and the chance is still there. They take account of the reform fact, and if they due account of it, and they calculate on that basis, instead of using their old arithmetic, their pre-reform arithmetic, there is an even greater case now for them becoming the disruptor. And it would not be difficult. All they would have to do is simply not difficult. All they would have to do is drop their current approach. And it wouldn't be a total switch around. It would just be a simple way of them saying, right, that isn't going to work. Our old approach isn't going to work, largely because the reform have intruded. Therefore, we need this new approach. And they sign up to the Manifesto for Independence. That is one way. That is a possibility. How much of a possibility, I don't know. Kenny McCaskill won't even listen to anybody talking to him about this. You can't even get through to him. It's exactly the same as the SNP. You cannot speak to them about this. You cannot speak to the party leadership, the Alapa party leadership, about this need for a more radical approach, because they just won't listen. So the other solution would be a new party, a new pro-independence party, a radical pro-independence party. That's what New Scotland Party was intended to be. As you know, we put New Scotland Party in abeyance for the 2026 referendum. There may now be a very good argument for New Scotland Party becoming active. That would be a very big decision, and it would be mainly a decision for me, having been the one who started this. It's a decision that I'm going to have to make quite soon, because if New Scotland Party is to engage with the 2026 election, we will have to make a start on that shortly, because at the moment the party doesn't even exist. Neither does the Corbyn Sultana Party. People are taking that seriously. Yeah, well, maybe we can take the New Scotland Party seriously as well. Maybe it's time. Bye for now.